meeting or I was going to be on Zoom, so.
Oh, well, we got Stu joining us anyway, so we're good. Just let me start recording, which is right here. All right, you are all set.
Okay, let's call the meeting to order. So I don't think we need to do introductions. Everyone knows everyone. Guests or anything? Any additions or deletions to the agenda? If you want to add?
Yes, we could have an executive session to consider the applicant for one of the subcommittees.
Sure. How much time do you think you'd need for that?
5 minutes.
Okay.
Before you do any voting, you should pass the gavel to Mary for our election.
Here's the fake game.
Yes, just to let everyone know, the nominating committee will be meeting in the next couple of weeks to formalize a slate of officers to propose at our February meeting. So that's the plan. And what we need to do tonight is to appoint Jan to continue to run the meeting until we have that formal slate to vote on next month. So we vote.
You need a motion to appoint Jan for January.
I'll second.
All in favor? Okay. Okay,
Thanks for putting your faith in now.
Gavel can be returned.
You're giving her the potential for an out?
Okay, so approval of the minutes of December 2nd. Have folks had a chance to look at it, and do we have a motion to feel motions to approve, and Mary is second? Do we have any edits? Okay, then, everyone in favor, please raise your hand. Great, thank you. Next is privilege of the floor. Any questions or comments from board or guests? Have any guests so from the board? Okay. I have no board correspondence or announcement. Anybody else? Are you aware of anything that I'm not thinking of? Okay. So we won't be doing the slate of officer nominations tonight, which is on the agenda. But we will next do the bylaw discussion continue.
I was in here December, but we didn't present the slate in December either.
It didn't go out 30 days in advance, so we have to do it according to the right way, or it has to be at least 15 days. Yeah.
So we're doing it now.
We're going to send it when it would be out 15 days in advance in January. So it'll be like, well, the three of us will meet and then it'll go out.
Okay, it's 30 days, but 15 is fine.
Okay.
Usually presented at the board meeting prior to the meeting that we vote on. So
Right.
solicit anybody want to be chair, kind of question, which nobody wants to.
Yeah, I think Carl did send it, but it might not have been in time, so that's fine. We can do it next month.
Well, and when that goes out 15 days in advance, make sure that the bylaws draft goes out then too, because we can't vote on the bylaws until it's gone out 15 days in advance. So
I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Khaki, but my thought was that the finalized version could be established this evening as
no,
notification.
only if it had been sent out by the 20th of December.
No, I mean, not to vote for this meeting, but to vote for the February meeting.
All right.
If we have discussion tonight, agree on a final version,
then it can go to.
But there's also not people that aren't here. We'll make sure it gets out.
People
in
that
time.
aren't here, as well as if there's a change made, then it
Yeah.
ought to,
That
yeah.
makes sense.
And a
We'll
change
make-
can be made at the time that we're voting,
Yes,
but it has to have been sent out 15 days in advance based on our old bylaw, on our current bylaws.
sure.
New bylaws will only require 5 days, which is, and somebody, oh, it was Sally who's not there, but she asked why the 15 days was changed to 5 days, and that was the county template that made it 5 days. So that's why I continued with that. It was what the county asked us for. So if we wanted to argue for it to stay at 15, I suppose we could, but that didn't strike me as something that wanted to have a fight about.
As long as Kathy's talking, we can go into our bylaws discussion. Kathy has
So,
worked diligently.
yeah, so a few changes have been made since we last talked about it in, it would have been the November meeting. And then, yeah, it didn't get sent out for the last meeting, so people hadn't had a chance to look at it, but what sort of conversation from the December meeting and from the November meeting, and then I went in and looked at the current charter language that got changed after the whole health department got created. So to make sure that and looked up to make sure there've been no changes in the state law and regs. So this draft now matches all those things. The primary changes being from what we saw originally was the article, adding the article for Commissioner of Whole Health back in. And this just mirrors the charter. It's actually the charter language that gives us authority. But we've just incorporated that language then into our bylaws. And it brings back in the quote special review committee, which is required for the clinic to have. But as was pointed out, we're the board for the clinic, so
Right.
so we're giving that permission. So this language is out of what was in our current, as well as meeting the requirements of the regulations, the state regulations.
And there was just one addition under the Commissioner of Whole Health. It
Oh, right.
requires the approval of the legislature, the Community Services Board, the Board of Health, and the New York State Commissioners of Health, Mental Health, Substance Use, and Developmental Disabilities. Developmental disabilities was omitted, so we're just
Yeah.
gonna add that
So we just
in
add it back in.
to that list, and then
My
substantive.
bad.
No, it's okay. There's a lot of them that weigh in. So what we can do, Kaki, I don't know if you have it there electronically. If you can make that one addition.
Yep.
Send it to me. I'll email it out tonight before I leave, so everybody has it for next meeting.
Okay, does anybody have any other comments? Assuming that you read the draft, I know it was high on everybody's list. Is that Howard? Is that your hand, Howard?
I was just wondering, Kathy,
Oh.
sort of the point of interest,
I can't see.
the language under statement of purpose. Is that language from the charter or from something in the mental hygiene law, or is that historic language for this board?
That,
Where that
that
comes,
that's a combination of what's listed in the mental hygiene law and the county charter, but also that was sort of wordsmithed by this group a couple of years ago. Looking at sort of creating a more general statement rather than just this list of responsibilities and purpose and such, which is in the mental hygiene law and the charter. But we've also added in a direct language recognizing that whatever's in the charter and in the mental hygiene law gets incorporated in here. So we don't have to go changing something if one of them changes.
Right.
I just have, this is more clarification, you know, that I need. I'm looking at Article 6, Commissioner of Full Health. So number 1. So, Commissioner of Full Health will be appointed by the county administrator, subject to confirmation by the legislature. Got that. The Tompkins County Community Services Board, Board of Health, et cetera. I thought we could recommend.
Oh, that's the old language, that's the old bylaws. And some of you will remember lots of not really friendly conversation that happened 6 years ago or so about what our role was. The legislature, when they rewrote the charter, gave us specific responsibility to be one of the confirmations.
Okay, great.
So
Okay.
this isn't us saying we want this new role. This is the role that's been established for us right now in the county charter.
Okay, got it. I just wanted to get clarification.
When we wrote the charter language, we wanted to equal the two boards,
Right.
the Board of Health and Community
Right.
Services. Board.
Right. That makes sense. I remember that. Okay.
And I just actually had one other question related to the language about the approval for the Director of Community Services when the Commissioner of Whole Health does not meet the requirements for that position. It says receives the approvals outlined above. That refers to the approvals of each of those entities in number 1.
Right. Of all those other entities, yeah.
Both the Public Health Director role and the Director of Community Services role have to have all of those requirements, and the charter outlines that very specifically. It allows for the commissioner to be one or other, and whichever one they're not, they are able to then delegate to a deputy, and that deputy has to go through these same approval processes.
I have a question about that. What happens if the commissioner of whole health is qualified or has the credential? I mean, we haven't. So what will happen in that case? Will he or she be the DCS, or will we decide we want somebody else to be the DCS?
So the way the charter is outlined is it establishes the commissioner as both the Public Health Director and the Director of Community Services. However, a single person cannot hold both of those roles.
Right.
So depending on how the legislature and all of you choose to hire, you could hire somebody in the commissioner role that could be either Public Health Director or Director of Community Services, and then a deputy would need to serve the other. And or you could have a deputy serve as both, and you could hire a commissioner that doesn't qualify for either.
Right.
Got it.
So it was essentially written that way to give you all as much flexibility as possible and the largest pool possible to identify the skill set that you think is appropriate at that point in time that you're recruiting.
Okay.
One other thing, Article 4, roles and responsibilities, number 3, going to down to the second paragraph, subcommittee chairs. I really like the way that we added the chairs may designate a subcommittee board member to attend and report in their place.
Oh, yeah.
That's great, but just above when it says shall attend meetings a year, can they attend virtually?
Sure. Shall we say in person or virtually?
For subcommittee chairs being able to attend if they're able to attend virtually.
We're saying that they've got to attend 3 meetings a year or designate someone to attend on their behalf.
Right, but if they wish to attend, but can only do so remotely,
Right.
can they, that's okay.
So well, shall we add that in?
I think the clarity would be helpful.
I mean, it makes sense to me. I mean, because, you know, those committees are allowed to meet. They're not a voting member. They're not a quorum person. So, you know, I mean, it doesn't matter how they're there. So do we want to specifically add that language? Shall attend in person or virtually
Yes.
or remotely? Remote.
Sounds like everyone agrees that's a good idea.
Maybe use some of the language of why it makes sense that we don't really need to have that in there, but we're putting that in there to make it clear because of what's the words for that?
transparency.
Well, okay.
So I think it just make it as, we want it to be clear.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you could interpret, 10 these days means in many instances, especially when the subcommittees, as Jackie mentioned, used to, well, we do meet virtually, but I think, a subcommittee chair, I just think the clarity, would be helpful.
Yes,
I'm not seeing it, but doesn't it somewhere here say that the subcommittees can meet virtually?
It doesn't say, I'm
Oh, yeah, yeah.
suggesting that we.
I just wanted to use the same language remotely. Okay, yeah. Yeah, whereas there is specific language requiring that that the CSB meet in person.
just completely ridiculous.
Are you looking for it, or I'm looking for that specifically?
Not sure.
language?
Wherever it talks about Article 7, paragraph 1, in-person attendance is required at all meeting except in cases of approved disability-related reasonable accommodation. So is that stricter than what is really the case here now, Frank?
No, because that's referring to the Community Services Board,
Right,
and that is correct.
okay. But you said I could vote, I just couldn't be part of the quorum when I'm sitting here.
Correct. Isn't that what it says?
I'm just wondering, is this language that I wrote stronger? Because it says that in-person attendance is required at all meetings.
Correct, but once you establish the meeting, there is rule. The county has established rule on
Okay.
meetings related to that. So this is just about essentially establishing the quorum.
Okay,
Yeah, I think you're fine.
okay,
Because the rules of the legislature allow for virtual participation after a quorum is reached, right? Yeah,
well, and you can't change your bylaws every time there's something
yeah,
that's written by, and one of the things that I'm sure the Board of Health is in the same situation, that there's all these regulations and laws and the charter and this and that all tie into, and place requirements on these two bodies, which is different than the other advisory committees that the county has.
I'm just a little bit confused. So, we can, for example, Jackie, is participating and we have an in-person quorum here. So, as a result of that, if we have any, votes, she can
Right, so I got
participate.
to vote that.
Vote
yeah.
because we have a in-person quorum here.
Correct.
Got it, okay.
yep.
I had a question about the unexcused absences. In reference to, one of our members. I wondered if you had a chance to follow up on that, Frank?
We have attempted but haven't connected yet.
My concern, the reason I keep bringing it up is, my concern is that it could show like we're favoritism, that we're giving her more opportunities when actually she's been given opportunities.
Sure, we'll try to make sure that that's wrapped up for you for
Okay,
February.
great. Thank
Sorry
you.
for the delay.
So is your question about the particular member that's in question at this point, or about the language in the bylaws?
The person who,
Okay, all right, I just wanted to make sure there wasn't something that we wanted to change. here.
No.
And it's a little bit cumbersome in the bylaws draft because the county has local law that says that if you miss 3 consecutive unexcused absences, you're deemed resigned. We also had language about any 3 absences in a calendar year. And not wanting to say that necessarily that you have to have resigned. State law requires that before you can remove a member of the CSB or a subcommittee, that they're given due process and an opportunity to be heard. So even though the county local law says you're out on 3 absences, state law says, you got to have an opportunity to be heard. So I was trying to just sort of mush all those various pieces together. And obviously we can always do more, give more to the person than what the law requires. You can always do more due process. The law likes that.
Well, I think the language that you've incorporated, Kathy, I think it's very good. I think
Okay.
it basically does what we talked about.
And we need to make sure when this goes to the legislature that they understand why that 3rd paragraph is there. You know, that even though the local law says you're deemed to have resigned your appointment, I've got this other language that says you've got to be given notice by the clerk of the legislature and an opportunity to be heard before final removal. That's because state law requires that.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't remember in my 14 years with the county, anyone being forcibly removed from an advisory board. I don't think it generally goes that way,
No,
but
no,
hear-
but I just, that first paragraph is the boilerplate that the county gave us.
yeah,
And so I just want to make sure that they understand why that extra part is put in there.
if you do get to forcibly removing people, I don't want to be around what has happened that you need to.
And we removed the part about a second 6-month leave of absence at the election of, at the vote of the board and that kind of stuff, because earlier conversation kind of that didn't make a whole lot of sense.
Right.
So we simplified it. Somebody could have a leave of absence. We're not holding those absences against them for 6 months, but if it's going to go longer than that, we need to talk.
Right.
And
Okay.
again, you can always be kinder to people.
What we point out also that we have language in there that said unexcused absence.
Right.
So that, you know, kind of the discretion of the chair to determine whether that gives a lot of leeway to people. Oh, I can't, I had 3.
Well, it does, although that's why I wrote in the second paragraph, that's why I wrote the language that's in there. Because I did a lot of thinking about that. The following any 3 unexcused absences or other behavior that indicates disinterest in continuing to serve collegially and productively on the body or a subcommittee, that we can start a conversation. Because you could have someone that was just being disruptive, or somebody that, you know, is asking to be excused every month for a year. You know, that's why I put that other language in there, so that there was a way to begin the conversation,
Thumbs
other
up on
than just
that.
an unexcused absence.
I think Sheila had one.
No, I'm
Oh, I
just saying,
thought you
yeah,
were-
I like the language. I'm glad that we've included it. And I'm, you know, because we do want to give people, giving people opportunities to, you know, to decide whether they want to remain on the board or not.
I mean, just like the forcibly removing, I can't imagine somebody who's, you know,
Yeah.
saying, oh, if they were all excused absences and I want you to keep me even though I haven't been there in 18 months, but we've at least got something to lean on if somebody wanted to be that kind of obstreperous board member.
Any other questions or
14
comments?
years that you've never had anybody removed.
Was I here? It was before me.
No, I
I think I
wasn't
was
even
there
on the
either.
board
So it was
then,
before
but I
that.
heard about it. I remember that, yes.
Forcibly removed.
Well, not specifically. I think
Very.
Walked out the door.
It's surprising.
Well, that's
We
probably
don't
better
talk
left for an
about
off the record
it.
conversation.
Right.
We've had that happen in the substance use.
That's why we want a police officer on the board, so we've got somebody that can knock them out if we need to.
That comes up so.
Yeah, it's- You guys are an unruly bunch. Well, if we keep locking you in the stairwell, I don't know. I get rough.
Hey, any further questions or comments?
I just want to say thank you, Kathy, for
Yes.
the amazing work, time, effort, and energy that you put into these bylaws. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank
Yeah.
you.
Welcome. Luckily, I still had all my notes from a couple of years ago.
Yeah. That was
Convenient.
Yeah, all right, so I am going to make a change, adding Developmental Disabilities Commissioner to Article 6. I'm going to add language in whatever that is, about the subcommittee chairs. Shall attend in person or remotely three meetings a year. Okay? And then I will send that to Frank and we'll get it out so that.
I will get it out
vote
immediately.
Next
Yep.
month.
Great, thank you both.
Yes, we're gonna get this done before I'm done.
Oh, but if you never get it done, he'll have. to
Apparently,
stay-
nobody in the county is actually ticking off whether they got these bylaws back from advisory committee.
They've got one. Okay, so the next item is the commissioner's report, so that will be you, right?
Yeah, yeah. So, I don't have a lot to report, specifically. A holiday season obviously is very quiet, a lot of folks gone, but, obviously everyone's aware that I will be leaving, my role. My last day will be February 7th, here, working. So about a month's time, I will be at your next meeting, so we will get the bylaws finalized. County Administrator Holmes in December appointed Jeremy Porter as the interim commissioner. He's our fiscal administrator. Jeremy has been with the department longer than I have. And he's had a meteoric rise because he is very, very good. He's committed to the work that we're doing, and he's done an amazing job integrating our administrative services across both departments, which I think makes him an excellent choice to fill in the interim because he, other than me, he has the best vision of everything that's going on across both places, and it will leave Harmony and Brenda respectively to focus on public health, mental health issues that come up. So the three of them will be working closely together, but he'll be leading and making any final decisions administratively and such that need to be made. So I have full confidence that you guys will be in good hands. I do still have one more meeting with you all, but it certainly has been my privilege to serve the county. It's been 14 years since I started as public health director. And February 1st, it'll be 10 years that I've been involved with the mental health department, which is hard to believe. Thinking back on some of the challenges that we faced over those years. I'm confident that the department's in a good place. You've got a strong clinic. You have expansion happening on Brown Road, which has been well received. There's expansion happening in the schools, and there's more planned for next school year as well. So I think you'll find the mental health side of things in very good condition. Harmony is amazing, as you all know, as our DCS, so you'll be well cared for there. I'm just happy to be able to report that I do believe I'm leaving the department in a better condition than I found it. And it has been my pleasure to do that over the last 10 years for you all. And I'm not leaving the community, so I'll still be around. And I've offered to Jeremy and county administration whatever help I can in the transition. And I'm going to be continuing to work on many of the things that are important to all of you for the most vulnerable folks in our community, just doing it with another organization. So just wanted to offer that and say thank you for the opportunity. And I look forward to, continuing to connect and work with all of you in my new role.
I think Frank deserves thanks for all of his work and commitment. This department and the board.
Thank you.
And yeah.
We
Anybody else?
merged the two agencies, the two entities that are very smooth at this point in time. You've been our fearless leader. I appreciate that.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Yeah, Frank, great job. I mean,
Thank you.
taming it every day.
Mm.
Every day something's moving and changing. So what does the search process look like?
Yeah, I was gonna ask, when are they gonna?
Yeah, so that's a good question. We're in the midst of a county administrator change as well. Our new county administrator started today, Corsa Comfy. And so Lisa Holmes is still helping a bit over the month of January. So I'm waiting to hear from them on exactly what will happen. But I imagine it will be a search as usual, where they'll do a national search. One of the things that will have to be considered is the credentialing of the individual that you'll be seeking as part of that process. So that'll have to be kind of addressed, I think, before it can be advertised. But my hope is that it'll be advertised before I go. So that way the search can move forward as quickly as possible. I can't really speak to the process other than we just talked about all the people that have to sign off on this. So I would hope there would be representation from both boards as well as perhaps staff and community partners in the process on the search committee. But that obviously would be up to the county administrator.
So you think they're talking about it? I mean,
Yeah. So certainly Lisa made Corsa aware of my departure when I submitted my resignation, and I don't know how much they've talked about it, to be honest with you. I have not heard from Corsa yet. It's his first day, so he's getting.
You gave plenty of notice. It seems it should be going out soon.
Yeah, I'm hopeful. I think it's the transition with county administrators is going to delay things a little more than it normally would have. I probably, if that wasn't happening, it might already be advertised, but because that's occurring, a little grace for somebody new coming into a very big job to figure out. So hopefully it will happen sometime in January. It'll be advertised, and that way the process can begin. I've told Jeremy, I've told Lisa, I do believe this is a destination. The county supports, I always say this, financially and philosophically, the work that we do, the work is respected, supported. The department is in great condition. So I don't see why we shouldn't be finding the best and brightest to kind of succeed me here. And I'm going to do my best to get the word out to the people that I know as well to try to help, because I do really believe there's so much potential here. And for the next person to jump off and do some really great things. So I'm hopeful that we can present ourselves in that way and get a really strong candidate pool for you all to choose from.
There is a lot going on there. There's quite a few positions to fill, so it does take a long time for those things to get posted and whatnot.
Yeah.
I think the next Health and Human Services meeting is next week, I think. I imagine it probably will be discussed somehow there. And of course, you can always come to those meetings and comment. And I'm sure the process of people from this board, at least they may go through a finalist search, you may end up with 2 or 3 finalists, and then an opportunity for people, I would assume, to meet that person and give their thoughts on.
Frank, what is the credentialing decision that has to be made? Could you tell us more about that?
Yeah.
Anything that this board would eventually want to have any input regarding?
So the way that, so as we were talking about before, I technically hold the public health director credentialing because I was hired with that. I didn't have it when I was hired. The state actually has a process for you to achieve the appropriate credentialing. It's a bit more strict now. You actually have to get an MPH. I only had to take 2 courses. I do have my MPH now, but so there's a public health credentialing piece, and the DCS, the Director of Community Services, which is pertinent to you, has a credentialing piece. Harmony fills that role right now. The challenge that we have is Brenda Crosby, who is the deputy of public health, doesn't currently meet the public health director credentialing requirements. She's been doing the job for 38 years, but she does not have a graduate degree. So technically she doesn't meet that requirement. So one of the things that's going to have to be considered is figuring out how to cover the public health director credentialing. There are people in the department that have that credentialing, so there's potential for reorganization. I wouldn't necessarily suggest that, but it is a possibility. Or the more likely scenario is that the candidate that is recruited either has to meet the public health credentialing requirements or be able to achieve them in a certain amount of time as approved by the New York State Department of Health. So that's really the decision making that needs to be made.
And who makes that decision?
The county administrator and the legislature in the recruiting process. If you all felt strongly, as Randy said, you could certainly have your voice be heard by communicating with the legislature and or the county administrator in that
I just
process.
think my only thought is that it kind of leans towards having to hire someone who has the public health qualifications,
Mhm.
where I'd rather see it be equal, where we might get some really good candidates that also can. Of course, we have Harmony, and I'm not trying to discount Harmony or Brenda, but just, in an equity sense.
I think the one thing to be mindful of is finding a perfect candidate that has experience with both is rare. And so there would have to be some pretty significant recruitment that happened to try to get there. The one thing that, for me, I think you are more likely to find a public health professional that has now mental health and behavioral health experience, understanding, involvement, than you might necessarily find a mental health professional that has public health kind of understanding and experience, simply because public health has realized that mental health and behavioral health is part of health, and it really has become part of the kind of the public health environment. As such, the state prevention plan has it as one of its 5 priorities. Obviously, our local plan has it as one of its priorities. So from that perspective, I think you have better luck finding a public health professional that knows mental health than maybe the other way around. Finding somebody that's a licensed social worker and has an MPH, that would be the dream, right?
Yeah, I'm not saying both, I'm just saying that, so that the candidate pool is mixed with both.
I see what you're
You
saying.
see what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the God's honest truth is I really thought I would be around longer and Brenda would retire. That was really the plan. She knew that. She knows doesn't meet the legal requirements. Unfortunately, that's not what happened. So it kind of puts us in this
Yeah.
different situation. The way the organization is currently designed is once we get fully through transition, and Brenda's kind of the last piece of that, is there are 5 positions, the 2 deputies, Jeremy's position, and the 2 medical directors that in theory could elevate to the commissioner if they chose and were interested. So the way we built the organization was to try to give you 5 in-house potential opportunities to promote up if you saw fit versus having to go outside. So we're close to that. It's just the piece of Brenda being a long-term employee that's more than capable to serve, has been interim public health director twice, but doesn't technically meet the legal definition right now, is the minor challenge.
Thanks for explaining that.
Sure.
Any other questions, Frank, about that?
I have a couple questions. Frank, have you said where you're going? I hadn't seen that, and I don't know if you've made a public announcement about where you're going.
Yeah, so on Thursday, press releases will go out for multiple timing reasons, but I'm going to be going to work for Cuyahoga Health Systems and supporting the leadership that's already in place, doing their behavioral health work. So the Trip Hammer Road facility and CARS reorganization, as well as they are looking to establish a federally qualified health center here in Tompkins County. They have one, they're starting one in Elmira under the Arnott umbrella, and they want to replicate that here. So there are leadership teams in place trying to make both of those a reality. And I'm going to be coming in to kind of added support, experience, community connection to that work. So still going to be working on many of the things that are important to us, just doing it with a different organization.
Great. And Jan, I just wanted to, I was involved in as a member of the search committees for the last few directors, and I'd be happy to be involved, but my main point is I think we need to make sure that whoever they are, that there are at least two, if not more, members of the Community Services Board or the subcommittees on the search committee.
That's a good.
So that's, I just think our voice is incredibly important as we move forward with the process. And I would say as soon as possible. So I was involved and other people from the CSB were involved in looking at resumes and designing the questions and all of that. So.
I'll share that at the Health and Human Services Committee. I'm sure it's going to be discussed then. I'll share it.
Thank you.
So Jan, is that something that you would have discussions potentially with the county administrator about this board representation on the search committee? Or I'm just wondering how that.
I could, but I don't know if that's the process. I was- yeah.
To follow up on that.
I could follow up. Does that seem appropriate to you?
Yeah, I think so. Just sending an email to
Okay.
Corsa and letting him know that the board is interested in participating. The Board of Health will likely do something similar. And of course, Randy's voice will help that too.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, I was on the committee, I think, the last time too.
Yes.
Yeah, so do you have other things to report, or was that?
No, that's really it. Obviously, there's a lot of transition going on, spending a lot of time with Jeremy, trying to get him up to speed, make sure everything is covered. And the calendar comparisons and all that, getting settled. Like I said, you'll be in great hands. I have no doubt that he'll be able to carry things forward. And of course, he has Brenda and Harmony supporting him as well as the rest of the department. So things will be good.
Will Jeremy be here next month?
He will. He'll be at the February meeting. He didn't find out he was going to be interim till right before Christmas, and he was on a 2-week vacation. Today was his first day back, and he already had a commitment tonight, so he couldn't be here tonight. But he will be here for the February meeting, and he'll be following me around to HHS and other meetings as well, getting him introduced to everybody.
Yes, Larry.
I have one more thing. Let's not forget that we want to talk to DSS and to I keep forgetting her name.
Kit.
Kate Kephart. So I don't know if that's going to be in February or March, but I think it's really important that we talk to her about what's happening with the homeless.
Sure, we'll figure that out and make sure we can at least report back when it's going to happen in February if it's not February.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I just wondered about the clinic director role. Has that been?
Yes, we have recruited Hillary. Oh boy, I can't remember her last name. I'm sorry, but she I don't think she started yet. I think she's starting in January at some point. She comes from William George Agency. So she has a pretty strong background in leadership and program development and organization, not as much with mental health regulation specifically, but very highly recommended as far as her leadership capabilities. So she'll be starting, I wish I knew the date, I'm sorry. We can find out and get that sent out to you, but we do have someone starting. We have also recruited another nurse practitioner, a psychiatric nurse practitioner for the clinic, and I am so sorry, I don't know that name at all. But we can.
Quickly we forget.
Yeah, I know. Just a little busy the last few weeks. Yeah, so the clinic is moving along. We are actually putting together an RFP for a search organization for the medical director role. We headhunter, for lack of a better way of describing it, but because it's going to be very costly, we have to do an RFP for it. So staff is working on putting that RFP together, and then we'll get a successful candidate for that, and then they will start the process of trying to find us a medical director. Dr. Lippert is still serving in that role, but he's ready to retire. And we want him to be able to do that at some point, and it's time. So we're gonna start that process. I'm hoping the RFP will be out by February, and then that process will go from there. So I think the clinic is in good hands. We have a really good senior team, senior clinicians that are doing really good work, keeping things, kind of running. They've really stepped in Susan Spicer's absence to keep things running. And with a new director coming in, I think they'll be in a real good spot to kind of, take things forward.
I believe we just raised the starting pay for that job. Is that correct? Did we raise it because we knew to acquire people?
Yeah, we had already raised it, but we raised it for a person and not for the title. So what you did recently was for the title,
So
so we could recruit at that level.
you realize that the number wasn't gonna bring people in, so.
No, our salary
Just a
schedule is
second.
very low.
Two questions. One, do you know if the new second P sees anyone under 18?
That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that, but I will find
What's the
out.
question? I didn't hear.
If the new site NP at the clinic is gonna see, sees people under 18. Second question.
I can answer that question. She's a new psych NP, so she's gonna be starting out learning as she goes, so we will work to get her under 18, but she doesn't have experience, I don't believe.
Second question, so regarding the DSS commissioner coming, I've been in some statewide conversations recently, hearing about how some other counties are structured. And one of the counties I was hearing from, they had their DSS commission, their commissioner for DSS was the same had that role as well as the DCS role. And I'm just wondering about for our county, and it's okay if you don't know the answer, but if our county has flexibility or interest in more jointly working with DSS in that way?
So my guess is, and I know there's a county where public health and DSS are together, Chautauqua is that way. I'm blanking on where there's but I would imagine they don't have a clinic. Because the DCS role, the local government unit role, if you don't have a clinic, is significantly smaller. It really is the 7:30 evaluations, it's meeting with you all, it's doing the planning kind of stuff, but it's it's probably the whole department, maybe 2 or 3 people. If they don't have a clinic, because the LGU component isn't that large. That would be my guess, but I don't know for certain. I think you are correct in your assessment that we could work better with our Department of Social Services. And my hope is my successor will see that and make that a reality. Because, we're serving many of the same people.
Thank you.
I don't comment on that. That issues come up, and I agree with Frank completely. And DSS, Department of Social Services, used to have an advisory board or advisory review board that hasn't been active for, I guess, 20 years. So that's going to be resurrected in 2025. And the theory is to understand more what DSS does and how they could improve what they're doing. So,
Do you have information about who will be like helping resurrect that or
I think
any
we just
contact?
finally agreed that we were going to do it.
Should do it.
So I think that it's kind of happened, I think, in the December meeting.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other things that people have to say or ask? Okay, what's next? So now it's on to executive committee. Mary,
Yes,
you're
give me
up.
1 second. First, you need to do a vote to go into executive session.
Oh, right. Yeah. So,
We go into executive committee.
okay, Stu is first, Jessica second, everyone in favor?
All
Right,
right, give me 1 second just so we're not live.
okay. Are Kathy and Larry still there?
Yep, they'll still be there one
Yeah,
second.
I just couldn't see them, so
Yeah.
I wasn't sure.
Stop.